I remember exactly where I was the moment I realized my marriage wasn't real. I was in the garage, underneath my F-150, changing out the oil filter, sweat soaking through my flannel shirt, even though it was only late April in Scranton. Amanda stepped in holding a stack of envelopes in her hand, her face blank like someone handing you a parking ticket. No, hey honey, no smile, just a cold stare and a sharp sentence. I need you to cover this. I maxed out the card again. Again. She dropped the bills on the workbench like they were nothing, like it was just another Tuesday. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked over, flipping through them. The total balance? Just under 12 grand. $12,000. On a Nordstrom card. We didn't have Nordstrom money. We had Aldi groceries, Walmart t-shirts, Costco for diapers kind of money. I was working full-time as a roofing contractor for Dixon & Sons, pulling in solid hours, but nothing fancy. Just enough to keep food on the table, keep the lights on, and set a little aside for the kids' future. Amanda hadn't worked in over 3 years. She said being home with the kids was her real job, and I respected that. I didn't argue, didn't complain, just did what a man's supposed to do, provide. But this was betrayal. Not just because of the money, because she'd lied. That credit card? I didn't even know she had it. Opened it behind my back. Used her maiden name. All the statements were being sent to a Gmail account I didn't even know existed. You know what the worst part was? It wasn't even the debt. It was what the debt was for. I looked at the purchases. Designer bags, spa packages, eyelash extensions, champagne brunches with her divorced friends from high school. I saw $400 charges at some overpriced place in Philly called Milk and Honey Lounge. A $900 hair salon receipt from New York. She was living like a damn influencer on my paycheck. I looked at her. No apology. No guilt. She just crossed her arms and said, I needed it. You would understand. You don't know what it's like to feel trapped. That's when it hit me. She wasn't sorry because she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. She truly believed she was owed that lifestyle. And I was just a fool working himself to death, so she could play house while living like she was single. For the first time in 8 years of marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. My garage was the last place that still felt like mine. The rest of the house was covered in white marble aesthetics, Pinterest decor, and throw pillows I wasn't even allowed to sit on. And now, even my garage had been invaded by this cold, hollow version of the woman I used to love. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just stood there stunned, like my brain couldn't fully process what was happening. You hid this from me? I asked. She shrugged. Shrugged. You work all the time, Derek. What do you expect me to do? Sit around and go crazy in this boring house. I needed to feel like a woman again, not just some babysitter with bills to fold. It wasn't about bills. It wasn't about boredom. It was about entitlement. That was the first moment I saw it clearly. She wasn't my partner. She saw herself as deserving of everything. My labor, my time, my income, but none of the responsibility. She wanted the Instagram life, not the actual life we had built with sweat, sacrifice, and late nights holding our son when he had croup. When I didn't react the way she expected, when I didn't scream or throw things, I think it confused her. I just nodded, said, okay, and walked back under the truck. But inside, something shut off. Something snapped. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat out on the porch with a glass of whiskey, looking out at the streetlight flickering near our driveway. I started remembering all the little moments I'd ignored, like how she always flinched when I touched her now, how she started turning her phone screen away from me every time I walked by, how the hugs from the kids had started to feel more like hers, taut, tense, careful. I remembered our son Eli asking if I could take him to his baseball practice, and Amanda cutting in with, he can't. He's always tired from work, like I was some background extra in my own family's movie. I realized I hadn't been part of her real life for a long time. I was just the sponsor. I confronted her again the next morning. Amanda, are you cheating on me? She didn't even deny it outright. Why would you ask that? She said, looking annoyed, not hurt. Not hurt, just irritated. I watched her put on lip gloss in the mirror before taking the kids to school, dressed in a low-cut blouse she'd never wear around me. And that's when I knew. I didn't need proof. The body language said it all. This wasn't just a debt issue. This was the beginning of a war I didn't even know had already started. a war I was expected to finance. She came home that evening like nothing had happened, tossed her purse on the couch, asked what I wanted for dinner. I looked at her and realized I didn't even know who the hell I was talking to. "I'll take care of the card," I told her, "but I'm going to need access to all your statements. From now on, we're transparent." She paused. "I don't think that's necessary. We need space, Derek. Financial and emotional space." Space. She wanted space. After nearly a decade of loyalty, commitment, raising 2 kids, and breaking my back to keep us afloat, she wanted space. What she really wanted was an exit strategy, and I was standing in her way. I didn't say another word that night. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't touch her. I started sleeping on the couch, and I began documenting everything, because I knew exactly where this was headed now. She was going to try and take it all: the house, the kids, the money, even my name. And no one was going to believe me if I didn't come prepared. That night, I created a new Gmail account, started backing up text messages, logging conversations, saving receipts, quietly, methodically. Because when a woman lies about debt, lies about affection, and lies about where she's going at night, that's not a phase. That's a plan. And I refuse to be the fool who didn't see it coming. Not anymore. I woke up that morning to the sound of cereal being poured and silence. No music playing in the kitchen like Amanda used to put on. No casual hums or chatting with the kids. Just the clink of a spoon hitting a ceramic bowl and the soft tap of an iPad screen. I sat up on the couch. I'd been sleeping there for a week by then, and glanced at the clock on the wall. 6:47 a.m. I walked into the kitchen, and there they were, Eli still in his pajamas, watching some Minecraft video, and Madison with syrup on her cheek, staring at her waffles. Amanda was standing in front of the fridge, scrolling through her phone with one hand, sipping oat milk with the other. No good morning, no glance, just a woman fully detached from the room she was in. "Morning," I said. She nodded but didn't speak. And I don't mean she was mad. I mean, she just didn't care. I watched as she took her time picking an outfit for work. Not real work, of course. She was now working part-time at some boutique in downtown Scranton. I say that in air quotes because for what I gathered, she mostly just sat behind the register texting her friends, sipping cold brew, and pretending she was Carrie Bradshaw on her break. I saw the receipts. That morning, she put on full makeup. Heels, lipstick, push-up bra, to-go fold scars at a store that saw 5 customers a day. Meanwhile, I was heading to work in the same boots I've had for 2 years. Holes in both soles, because replacing them would have meant skipping groceries that week. "Can you pick up the dry cleaning later?" she asked, walking out the door. "What dry cleaning?" "My blazer. The blue one. I dropped it off last Thursday." "You forgot." "No, please. No, thank you." Just a command. Like I was the help. That's when I started to see it clearly. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a service. I paid the bills, handled yard work, fixed anything broken, and now I was running errands too. Meanwhile, she treated herself like some untouchable queen. No intimacy, no affection, not even a basic human warmth. Just passive commands and cold shoulders. But it was the next conversation that sealed the coffin. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat on the couch with a beer in my hand and finally asked her something I had been avoiding for weeks. "Amanda, do you even want to be married to me anymore?" She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even look up from her phone. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe we're just different now. Maybe we outgrew each other." Outgrew each other? This wasn't a middle school hoodie we're talking about. This was a family. A home. A life built over nearly a decade. Outgrew? I work, I provide, I try to keep this place together. I don't cheat. I don't drink myself into a stupor. I help with the kids every single day. What exactly did I do wrong? She shrugged. "You're predictable. You don't excite me anymore. You come home smelling like tar and sweat. All we talk about is bills. I want more than this." "More than what? A loyal man who never stopped showing up?" "Apparently, yes." And then she dropped the sentence that changed everything. "If I'm being honest, I stay because I know you'll keep taking care of everything until I figure things out." I swear to God, she said that verbatim. That's when it all clicked. This wasn't just emotional neglect. This was strategic dependency. She didn't see me as a man anymore. She saw me as a buffer, someone to shield her from real life until she was ready to move on. She wanted to party like she was 25 while keeping the benefits of being married to a responsible, overworked, underappreciated man. I went to bed in the basement that night. Not on the couch. The basement. It smelled like damp concrete and old paint cans, but it was better than staying within breathing distance of someone who looked at me like I was a failed investment. I started to track everything. Her spending, her hours away from home, her patterns. She had started volunteering at a local community theater on Wednesday nights. Strange, since she never once showed interest in acting or community service before. So I followed her once. Not like a movie stalker, just followed at a distance. Watched her meet up with some guy in a silver Acura. Watched her lean in the window and kiss him on the cheek. Watched her laugh like she hadn't laughed in months. Then watched her get in the car and drive off with him, heading toward Wilkes-Barre, past the theater district. No confrontation, no outburst, no tears, just confirmation. She wasn't just bored. She was replacing me while still using me. 2 days later, she sent me a Venmo request. $84 for hair. No message, just a request. I declined it. She came storming into the garage that night, demanding to know what my problem was. I didn't yell. I just looked at her and said, "I'm not funding your new life while you slowly erase me from the old one." She went ballistic, started yelling about how I never supported her dreams, how I was emotionally controlling, how I was too bitter to make her feel loved. It was all projection. I wasn't bitter. I was just done being blind. The next morning, I made 3 moves. Opened a separate bank account, consulted a divorce lawyer, made copies of every financial document in the house. I didn't confront her again. I didn't argue. I played dumb. Let her keep thinking she was in control. But I had already stopped being her husband, because she had stopped being my wife long before that. And as much as it hurt, as much as it ripped me apart to watch the mother of my kids treat me like a burden, I knew I had to let go of the illusion. From that day forward, I wasn't a husband. I was a man preparing for war. The first time Amanda brought up therapy, it wasn't out of guilt. It was a performance. We were sitting in the car outside Target, of all places, after a routine grocery run. She looked over while scrolling through her phone and dropped the suggestion like she was reading a headline. "I think we should try therapy. Not for us, really for closure." Closure. The word slapped me across the face. We hadn't even talked about divorce yet. But there she was, already referring to our marriage in past tense. I remember staring out the windshield, hands tight on the steering wheel, and asking the only thing I could think of, "So we're not trying to fix it. We're just doing paperwork for the autopsy." She didn't laugh, didn't blink, just said, "I want a third-party perspective. Someone neutral. You always twist things when it's just us." Twist things? I hadn't raised my voice in weeks. I hadn't questioned her shady Wednesday nights. I hadn't confronted her once about the guy in the silver Acura. I've been walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace for the sake of our kids. Eli, who'd started stuttering again from the tension at home, and Madison, who was waking up with nightmares almost every night. But now I was the problem. So fine. Therapy. I said yes. Not because I believed it would help, but because I needed to hear from someone neutral that I wasn't losing my mind. That first session was in a small office above a bakery in downtown Scranton. Therapist's name was Dr. Stephen Merritt, mid-40s, military haircut, wore jeans and a flannel under his blazer. No clipboard, no condescending tone, just calm. He opened the session with something that stuck with me. "I'm not here to save your marriage. I'm here to help you see it clearly. That sometimes includes walking away." Amanda smiled like she'd just won the lottery. From the moment we sat down, I could feel the setup. She came prepared, not with notes, but with lines. She spoke first, of course, controlled, polite, emotionally vacant. "I just feel like I'm raising 3 children. I cook, I clean, I manage the home, and I never get anything back emotionally." He shuts down, avoids conflict, and leaves me isolated. I could barely breathe. This was her narrative? She forgot to mention the secret credit card. She skipped over the affair. She left out the 4-day stretch where I handled both kids solo while she visited her cousin in upstate New York and came back with a fresh tan, new nails, and no receipt. I looked at Dr. Merritt and waited for my turn. I go to work every day. I come home. I cook when she doesn't. I read to our daughter at night. I take our son to therapy. I pay for everything, her phone, her gas, her gym membership, and all I get in return is distance. No conversation, no affection, just orders. Amanda blinked once, leaned back, and crossed her legs. Calm, prepared. See what I mean? He keeps score. That's when I realized the trap. She wasn't there to solve anything. She was there to document my collapse. Every pause I made, every shift in my tone, every glance, she was logging it. Because that's what people do when they're building a legal case in disguise. Over the next 4 sessions, it got worse. She would mention financial control, say I watched her spending too closely, and accuse me of invading her independence. All because I froze the joint account after finding out she was sending money to some random Venmo labeled Chris MUA, a makeup artist. At least, that's what she told me. Dr. Merritt began to look concerned, but not in the way I expected. After session 5, he asked me to stay behind for a few minutes. Amanda didn't argue. She walked out the room with that fake lip smile she used on servers. And then Merritt leaned in. Do you actually want to fix this? He asked. I hesitated. I don't know. I used to. But now I just want the truth. He nodded slowly, took a deep breath, and looked me dead in the eyes. I've been doing this for 17 years. She's already gone, Derek. You're not in a relationship anymore. You're standing in a courtroom with no paperwork yet. My mouth went dry. He wasn't being cruel. He wasn't saying give up. He was warning me. You're not being heard in there. You're being recorded. And when people show up just to be right, not to reconnect, therapy becomes a stage. That was the moment it clicked for me. She wasn't here to heal. She was here to build a profile of abandonment and emotional abuse, things that would look powerful in a family court hearing. She was collecting phrases, buzzwords, screenshots of appointment times, all to create an illusion of a woman who tried everything. And me? I was just the bad guy in her narrative arc. She once cried during a session. I watched the tears come, on cue, the exact moment she said, I just don't know who I am anymore. But when the session ended and we got into the car, she immediately pulled out her phone and started texting and smiling like nothing had happened. No tears, no shaking hands, just the face of someone playing chess. I wasn't angry. I was horrified. I started to think back. Every argument over the last year, every time she said, you're overreacting, or you need help, or you're making this up. It was all calculated erosion. One night, after a 6th session, she left her therapy notebook out on the kitchen counter. I know, I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. She had a list. Things to mention next time. I do everything alone. I feel emotionally abandoned. I'm scared of his anger. Be careful how I word this. Mention how kids sense the tension. Maybe ask about emotional detachment from childhood. It wasn't a journal. It was a blueprint, a script. And that's when something inside me shifted. I stopped trying to fix a marriage that had already been replaced by a court case. I stopped defending myself to someone who already decided I was guilty. And most of all, I stopped speaking in therapy. Dr. Merritt noticed it. At our next session, he asked why I'd gone quiet. I just said, I'm listening now. I need to hear what she wants to say before I say anything I can't take back. He didn't press, because he understood. He was the first man in months who actually saw me. And I'll never forget what he said before our final session ended. I hope you've been documenting everything. If not, start now. You're not in a marriage. You're in a negotiation. He was right. That same week, Amanda asked for a break. She said she wanted to move into her sister's house for space. Her sister lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, 3 hours away. No kids, no job, just a 1-bedroom apartment and a dog that hated children. She left that weekend. Took both kids with her. No warning. No court order. Just packed them into the SUV and left me with a sticky note on the fridge that said, Don't freak out. I need this. We'll talk next week. I didn't freak out. I called my lawyer, and I prepared for war. I was balancing on a 2nd-story roof in Clark Summit, finishing a gutter repair on a Tuesday morning when I got served. The guy walked up the ladder like it was nothing, clipboard in one hand, envelope in the other, dressed in some khakis and a windbreaker like he was delivering Chinese takeout. He looked up at me, expressionless. Derek Carson? I wiped the sweat from my brow, confused, and nodded. He handed me the envelope like it was a pizza. "You've been served." I didn't even have time to respond. He turned around and disappeared like a ghost. Just like that. I stood on that roof, envelope in hand, and for a second, I thought I might fall off. My knees buckled. My heartbeat shot straight into my throat. My coworker, Tony, who was down by the work van, looked up and saw the color drain from my face. "You good, man?" I wasn't. I climbed down that ladder slower than I ever had in my life. I sat on the curb, opened the envelope, and just stared. Amanda Carson versus Derek Carson. Petition for dissolution of marriage. That wasn't the part that got me. It was the list of demands. Full physical custody of both kids. Child support of $1,376 per month. Alimony for an undetermined period. The marital home. Exclusive use of both vehicles until further hearing. 50% of my retirement account and pension. All furniture, electronics, and household items. Request for supervised visitation until emotional evaluation is complete. It was like someone took a baseball bat to my spine. She didn't just want out. She wanted to gut me. I drove home in silence. Couldn't even listen to the radio. Just the hum of the tires and the pressure in my chest. I parked outside the house, my house, the one I spent 5 summers renovating with my own 2 hands, and looked at the door like it was foreign. She wasn't home. She'd already moved into her sister's place in Hoboken with the kids. Left my world in pieces and now wanted to take the dust too. I called my attorney, Melissa Owens, a sharp, no-nonsense woman I'd only met once when I was considering my options. She picked up after 2 rings. "You got served?" "Yeah." "Bring the papers." "Right now." I didn't hesitate. I drove straight to her office, a brick building wedged between a subway and an insurance agency in downtown Scranton. Her assistant, a young guy named Cole, gave me a bottle of water and a folder to drop the paperwork in. Melissa walked in 10 minutes later, sat down, and read through everything like a machine. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and just sighed. "Okay, we're not dealing with a divorce. We're dealing with a strategy. She wants to destroy you financially and emotionally before we even hit court." "Why? I mean, what did I do? I never cheated. I never raised a hand. I worked. I showed up." "You didn't feed the narrative," she said plainly. That phrase hit me like a shovel to the ribs. Feed the narrative. Amanda had painted herself as some burned-out, underappreciated housewife while I played the role of the quiet, exhausted husband. And now she was twisting that into her case. She wanted the courts to see me as cold, detached, maybe even unsafe. That's why she wrote in that line about emotional instability. I could already see it. She'd cry on the stand, tell the judge I'd been losing control, bring up old therapy notes out of context. And the kids? She listed herself as the primary caregiver, claiming she handled 90% of child responsibilities, which was pure fiction. I packed Eli's lunches every morning. I drove Madison to school. I was at every damn parent-teacher meeting while Amanda was posting selfies at wine bars on Instagram. But in court, perception beats reality, and she was playing that game like a seasoned pro. I started to unravel that week. Sleep vanished. My appetite disappeared. My hand shook constantly. I was still showing up to work, but my mind was buried in panic. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time I saw a silver Acura on the road, my stomach twisted. Amanda had gone from lover to opponent, and I couldn't believe I ever shared a bed with someone who now wanted me labeled as a dangerous father. A few days later, I got an email from her attorney. They were requesting a temporary custody order. Until the hearing, she wanted full physical custody with monitored visitation for the father, pending psychological review. That's when I really lost it. I wasn't angry. I was devastated, because Amanda knew what she was doing. She wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to erase me. She wanted my kids to see me as some flawed, broken man who needed permission to be their dad. She wanted the judge to view me as emotionally erratic, when the only time I ever raised my voice in that house was when our fire alarm wouldn't stop beeping at 2 a.m. I called Melissa that night, pacing around the backyard with a cigarette in hand. I hadn't smoked in 6 years, but that week broke something in me. "What do I do?" I asked her. "They're painting me like a monster. I don't even know how to respond to this." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stuck with me through everything that came next. Don't respond with fire. Respond with proof. That flipped a switch in me. I dug in. I started compiling everything. Photos, videos, voice memos, text messages. I even pulled out school pickup records, pediatrician bills in my name, emails from teachers that showed I was the one in contact, not Amanda. I made a timeline, labeled everything. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to bury her lies in paper and truth. Meanwhile, Amanda kept playing the victim. She posted a cryptic status on Facebook. When you try to leave a toxic man and he turns into your worst nightmare. People commented hearts and prayers. No one asked for details. Because why would they? She was pretty. She was soft-spoken. And I was a tired-looking guy with calloused hands and bloodshot eyes. Who do you think the world believes? But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't fighting for image. I was fighting for my kids, for my rights, for my sanity. And I wasn't going to let her take everything and call it justice. She thought the courtroom would be her playground. She had no idea I'd be walking in with a folder thick enough to shatter the narrative she built. You want to know what real pain is? It's sitting in a courtroom while your daughter clutches your arm, crying to your shirt, begging the bailiff not to make her go home with the woman who used to tuck her in and now treats her like a chore. That was me, 6 weeks after Amanda filed for full custody. We were in Lackawanna Family Court, courtroom 3B. I was wearing my best flannel, the one with no paint stains or tears, and the only pair of clean jeans I had left that didn't sag at the knees. I'd shaved twice that morning just to keep from looking like a man who hadn't slept in days, which I hadn't. Amanda sat across the room, calm, poised, in some beige blouse I'd never seen before. Next to her was her attorney, Rhonda Winston, the same one who bragged online about getting mothers everything they deserve, no matter how messy the divorce. I was on my third lawyer by then. My first two weren't cutting it. They were more concerned with paperwork than people. But now I had Rebecca Klein, a firecracker from Wilkes-Barre, ex-public defender, and a woman who didn't flinch when Amanda's team tried to paint me as unstable. But none of that mattered when it came to the kids. Because in family court, the moment a man walks in, he's already 10 steps behind. That's the truth no one tells you until you're in the system. Amanda's lawyer opened the hearing by painting a picture of me as volatile, erratic, controlling. She said I had unresolved emotional trauma and created a tense home environment for the children. She said this with a straight face about the man who had built a treehouse in the backyard by hand, who had spent every Friday night since 2019 doing movie night on the living room floor with popcorn bowls and superhero pajamas. Then came her twist. My client is requesting supervised visitation only. The children have expressed a pattern of anxiety and fear after time spent with Mr. Carson. I looked over at Eli, my son, and saw him drop his head. This was parental alienation, plain and simple. She had spent the last 2 months slowly poisoning them against me, subtly, quietly, but with surgical precision. She told them I didn't want to see them, told them I left them, told them I was too angry to be around, told them the court didn't think I was safe. And then she blamed me for the fallout. It was master-level manipulation, and the kids were caught in the middle of it. I noticed the changes. Eli had stopped calling me Dad. Now it was just Derek. Madison, who used to draw me crayon hearts every time I packed her lunch, barely looked me in the eye when I picked her up on court-approved days. One time she whispered, "Mom says you're going to leave like Grandpa did." That one hurt. Amanda was rewriting their memories, replacing the man who taught them how to ride bikes, tie shoelaces, and pray before bed with a version of me that never existed. And yet, the judge listened. Listened as if it were reasonable. Listened as if it might be true. We had a guardian ad litem assigned to us. Carla Reeves, mid-50s, polite, efficient, and terrifyingly neutral. She visited my house twice. The first time, the smoke alarm wouldn't stop chirping. The second, Eli refused to speak to her. After her report, I found out she'd written that the children seemed to express a consistent discomfort around the father, particularly the son. That tore me apart, because Eli didn't fear me. He was afraid to love me too much, because if he did, his mother would punish him for it. I had proof, drawings Eli made of a house split in half. One side happy, one side dark. I had a recording of Madison asking me why Mommy says you yell so much when I hadn't raised my voice in front of them in a year. I had texts from Amanda threatening to cancel my weekends if I was late even once. But what is truth when you're fighting perception? Every time we got close to a ruling, Amanda's team delayed. They said Eli needed a full psychological evaluation. They said I should be open to parenting classes. They asked for an independent custody specialist. It wasn't about the kids. It was about draining me dry. Every new motion was another bill. Another $800 retainer. Another weekend in limbo. Another piece of me ripped away. And through it all, I didn't stop fighting. I showed up to every court date. I followed every rule. I kept a journal of every drop-off, every missed call, every tantrum the kids had after a week at Amanda's. And one day it paid off. The kids were staying with me for a supervised weekend. But the court didn't know Amanda was heading to Atlantic City for a wellness retreat with her new boyfriend, some guy named Kyle, a bartender with a domestic record in Jersey. Amanda's sister dropped them off. And that Saturday, for the first time in weeks, Madison came into the kitchen, wrapped her arms around my leg, and said, "I miss your pancakes, Daddy." That night, I pulled out my phone and recorded us, cooking, laughing, dancing to old-school Bon Jovi in the kitchen. Not for content, not for social media, for proof. The next hearing, Rebecca submitted it to the court, along with a notarized statement from Amanda's sister, admitting Amanda had lied about being out of town for work. Carla, the guardian ad litem, watched the video in silence. And for the first time, the judge's tone shifted. Not fully, not decisively, but he said something I'll never forget. It appears this case requires more than one perspective. We will reassess visitation and evaluate both parties for parenting cooperation. In other words, she no longer had the full narrative. And I saw it on her face, that flicker of panic. The first crack in the mask. She stood up too fast, gathered her things too harshly. For a moment, she wasn't the calm, grieving mother. She was exposed. And me? I stood there, still holding that same folder I'd carried into court every time. Full of photos, notes, report cards, lunch receipts, drawings from the kids. A folder full of memories I refused to let her rewrite. That custody battle didn't end that day. But something shifted. The court started to see me as more than a paycheck, more than an obstacle. They saw me as what I had always been, a father who never stopped showing up, even when the world told him to give up. And that kept me going. You ever look at your bank app and feel your entire body go numb? Not like the, "oh, I overspent" kind of numb. I mean, your hand starts shaking, your stomach flips, and your brain goes completely silent kind of numb. That was me on a cold Thursday morning in November, parked outside a Sheetz gas station in Dunmore, sipping bad coffee, just trying to stay awake after a brutal overnight shift. I opened my banking app to transfer $200 for rent. Balance, $6.14. I blinked, refreshed it. Same number. I checked the transaction history, and there it was. Joint withdrawal, $18,437.91. Processed 4:16 a.m. Amanda had emptied our entire savings account. Everything I'd put aside for rent, for groceries, for the kids' Christmas, for my lawyer, gone in the middle of the night like a smash-and-grab robbery. No warning, no message, just gone. I sat there in the car, gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding like I'd just been tossed. The gas station lights blurred through my windshield, and I swear I couldn't even hear the radio anymore. All I could hear was my own breathing and the sudden realization. She wants to destroy me, and not in the emotional breakup kind of way. I mean, she wanted to bury me alive, ruin my credit, leave me on the streets, and walk away smiling. I called the bank. They said the withdrawal was legal. We were still technically married, and it was a joint account. She didn't need permission. She had full access. They couldn't reverse it. It didn't matter that I was the one depositing money into that account every Friday for 10 years. It didn't matter that she hadn't worked consistently in half a decade. It didn't matter that I had receipts, invoices, pay stubs, everything. The law saw her name on the account and said, "Too bad." I texted her. No response. I called her. Straight to voicemail. So I drove to the house. The same house I built up from scratch, room by room, painting walls after 12-hour shifts, fixing siding on weekends, laying down hardwood floor planks in the dead of summer with a fan blowing drywall dust in my face. And now, there was a sheriff's notice taped to the door. Emergency protective order. Stay back 100 feet. I didn't even understand what I was looking at. I thought it was some prank or a mistake, until my neighbor, Paul, stepped out from his porch and said, "Derek, man, she called the cops on you last night. Said you made threats. They served the order at like 2 a.m. You can't be here." I laughed. I actually laughed, because I hadn't even seen Amanda in 2 weeks. I had been staying at my buddy Vince's garage apartment to avoid conflict while we figured out custody. I hadn't said a word to her, hadn't knocked, hadn't even driven by the house. But now, suddenly, I was a threat. I drove straight to Rebecca's office, my lawyer, heart still thumping like I had a drum in my chest. She sat me down, read the copy of the emergency order I had taken a photo of, and just exhaled slowly. She's playing her final hand. This is a full-scale financial and legal assault. She wants to cut off every resource you have, money, kids, housing, and then show up in court saying, "See, he's unstable. He can't support them." I didn't say anything, because what the hell do you say to that? Rebecca leaned forward and gave me the only thing I needed to hear. "Don't panic. We're going to beat this. But you need to stay quiet, stay clean, and stay smart. Every move counts now." I walked out of her office with a manila folder in one hand and no place to sleep. I called Vince. He said I could stay another week, but his landlord was already getting weird about unauthorized guests. I slept on his pull-out couch in a freezing apartment with no insulation and a leaky faucet that never stopped dripping. That night, I ate a gas station sandwich and stared at the ceiling, and I remember thinking, this is how they break you. Not with a single blow, not with some courtroom slam, but slowly. First they take the warmth, then the space, then the dignity, then the freedom. And if you're not careful, they'll make you believe you deserve it. The next morning, I got a message from Eli's school. He'd gotten into a fight, apparently snapped at another student who said something about his dad being gone. The principal said he was acting withdrawn, emotionally reactive, and that Amanda claimed I'd been missing visitations, which was a lie. I had documentation of every missed pickup, and she was the one refusing. I sent the timestamps to the court coordinator. Nothing happened, because when a man is accused of being angry, no one needs proof. They just nod and move on. 2 days later, Amanda filed a motion to suspend visitation permanently until I demonstrate emotional regulation. Her lawyer used the restraining order, the drained bank account, and Eli's school incident as proof that I was unfit to co-parent. And that was it. That's when I broke. Not outwardly, not in some public meltdown, but inside. I remember walking into the Lackawanna Public Library, sitting in a corner near the travel magazines, and crying behind a shelf of books like a ghost. Not because I was ashamed, but because I realized I was losing. Not just a legal battle, not just a house. I was losing my entire sense of self. I was a father without kids, a provider without money, a husband without a home, a man without a voice. And Amanda? She was at brunch with her new boyfriend, posting filtered Instagram stories with the caption, "Healing is hard, but necessary." Healing? She wasn't healing. She was executing a strategy, and she was close to winning, until I made a decision. That night, I stopped trying to fight back emotionally. I switched into survival mode. I opened a new bank account under a completely separate institution. I applied for a gig job doing night deliveries and junk removals. I got a P.O. box to make sure court mail wouldn't be intercepted. And I started documenting everything. Receipts, emails, school correspondence, witness statements, even photos of the house I built, now rotting under her neglect. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I got silent. I got surgical, because the next time we walked into that courtroom, I wasn't going in as a man fighting for mercy. I was going in as a man with evidence, composure, and nothing left to lose. You can tell when the courtroom's already decided who the villain is, before you even open your mouth. It's in the way the bailiff avoids eye contact, the way the clerk doesn't smile, the way your ex walks in with a new haircut, new blouse, and a calm, rehearsed face like she's starring in a courtroom drama. Not real life. That's how it was the morning of our final custody hearing. I was sitting outside courtroom 4C in Lackawanna County Family Court, tied too tight around my neck, holding a folder that weighed more than it looked. Not physically, but emotionally. It held everything I'd collected: emails, text logs, bank records, drawings from the kids, therapist notes, photos, truths. Amanda walked in like a character in a Hallmark movie. Soft beige dress, minimal makeup, her hair done in a loose bun, like she was trying to look humble but elegant. She didn't even look at me. She didn't have to. She was playing the part of the wounded mother. And me? I was the man in worn-out dress shoes, with a $5 haircut and eyes that hadn't known sleep in 3 weeks. The judge, Honorable Leslie M. Burroughs, was known in the local family law circle for being protective of the maternal bond. Translation: fathers start at a disadvantage. I knew that walking in, but I had no idea how fast it would feel like a firing squad. Amanda's attorney, Rhonda, opened with a full narrative arc. Your Honor, my client has demonstrated resilience in the face of emotional instability and financial hardship. She has single-handedly maintained the children's routine, their emotional safety, and their educational stability. Despite consistent intimidation, she has prioritized peace and consistency. She presented screenshots, selectively cropped text messages. One of them showed me saying, "You'll regret doing this to me." Out of context, it looked like a threat. In truth, it was after she wiped our savings and left me sleeping on a couch with frozen pizza boxes as my pantry. But context isn't sexy. Rhonda went on about how Amanda had done everything possible to encourage a co-parenting arrangement, but that my emotional volatility and aggressive communication patterns made that impossible. She said I was inconsistent, unavailable, and unfit for unsupervised visitation at this time. Then she handed the judge a printed binder, color-coded, tabs, labeled. Amanda sat beside her, hands folded neatly, eyes moist, jaw still. She was acting like a woman barely holding it together. That performance? It was Oscar-worthy. Then it was Rebecca's turn, my lawyer. Calm, calculated, but clearly on defense. She pointed out discrepancies in Amanda's timeline, questioned the order of events, raised doubts about the restraining order, the school behavior issues, and why Amanda took the kids out of town without telling anyone. But the judge barely nodded. She had already bought Amanda's image. And then, without fanfare, I was called to the stand. I took the oath, sat down, looked at the judge, then at the court reporter. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from pressure. This wasn't just a hearing. This was my only chance to speak for myself, to tell the truth behind the silence. Rebecca asked me to explain the events from my perspective. I didn't read off paper. I didn't memorize lines. I spoke like a man who had been dragged through glass and was finally allowed to bleed out loud. Your Honor, I've been called volatile, unstable, and unfit. But I want you to understand something. I've never missed a single school function, dentist appointment, or Friday night bedtime in my kids' lives. I packed their lunches. I built their beds. I held their hands when they were sick. The only thing I failed at was convincing their mother to stay in a marriage she left long before the paperwork was filed. I pulled out the folder, gently, quietly, and I began to show it. I showed screenshots, not just the text threads, but videos. One Madison in my arms, laughing. Another of Eli helping me wash dishes while Amanda was out on her 3rd yoga retreat. I had emails from teachers addressed to me, progress reports I signed, voicemails from Amanda, cursing me for being too involved in a parent-teacher meeting she forgot to attend. I showed receipts of the money I sent her for groceries, only for her to spend it on spa treatments. And then I played one voicemail. I had debated for weeks whether to use it, but I knew it mattered. It was Amanda's voice, recorded legally from a speakerphone. If you just gave me the house, the car, and full custody, this could all be easier. You can see the kids whenever I let you. But keep fighting me, and I'll make you look like a monster. The courtroom went dead quiet. Even Rhonda blinked twice. The judge looked up from her papers, really looked at me for the first time. I could see it, the shift. She wasn't sure anymore. She asked me directly, "Mr. Carson, have you completed the parenting classes we recommended?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Twice." And are you currently employed? Yes. 2 jobs. Full-time contractor and part-time delivery. She asked if I had housing. I showed her my lease for a 1-bedroom rental with a twin mattress and a box fan. Not fancy, but clean, stable, safe. Then she asked the question I'd been preparing for. Why should this court consider modifying custody? I didn't flinch, because my kids aren't chess pieces. They're not weapons. They're not bargaining chips for leverage or revenge. They're 2 little humans who deserve both parents, not a curated narrative that erases one of them. Silence. No theatrics. No tears. Just a man, stripped down to his truth, with nothing left to lose. That was the moment something cracked. Not in Amanda. In the courtroom itself. The judge requested a recess. When we returned, she ordered a temporary shared custody agreement, pending psychological evaluations for both parties, not just me. She demanded a full audit of our joint financial history, including where the $18,000 had gone. She even questioned the basis of the restraining order, calling it procedurally rushed. Amanda's face didn't twitch, but her nails were digging into her wrist like she'd just lost a poker hand she thought was guaranteed. And me? I walked out of that courtroom not with a win, but with something far more important. A voice. For the first time, I wasn't just the dad with anger issues. I was a man who spoke clearly, calmly, and carried his truth with receipts. They always say truth comes out eventually, but no one tells you what it feels like when it finally does. When the air in the courtroom shifts, when the judge stops scribbling, when the attorney's tone cracked for just a second. That moment came on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, 6 months into the legal bloodbath Amanda had turned our divorce into. By then, I was already bruised but standing, half custody restored, false narratives unraveling, and Amanda's calm, perfect image slowly starting to fray around the edges. But I wasn't prepared for what was about to happen next. We were scheduled for another hearing on financial disclosures and visitation compliance. It was supposed to be procedural, nothing dramatic. I wore a navy button-up, the one Rebecca said made me look stable, and carried the same folder I had been updating religiously. Amanda walked in late. Hair curled, tight black pantsuit, a forced smile, but this time she wasn't glowing. She looked worn, like someone playing a role she wasn't sure the audience still believed in. Her lawyer, Rhonda, opened with complaints about missed support payments, even though I had bank statements showing I'd paid early for 3 months straight. Then she pushed a motion for increased alimony, claiming Amanda was under extraordinary stress due to my coercive tactics. It was all noise. I was already used to it. What I wasn't ready for was what the judge did next. Without even looking up, Judge Burroughs said, "I've reviewed the third-party statement submitted last week regarding Ms. Carson's fitness. The court has a few questions before we continue." Everyone froze. Rhonda turned to Amanda, whispering something. Amanda just blinked. She hadn't heard about any statement. Neither had I. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Carson, are you aware of a woman named Cynthia Leach?" I swallowed. Cynthia? That was Amanda's former best friend. They'd known each other since high school. She used to come to our house for cookouts, birthdays, wine nights. Then, suddenly, she vanished from Amanda's life a few months back. I never knew why. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. They were close. She has submitted a notarized affidavit with attached text records and a statement of concern for the well-being of your children while under your ex-wife's care. The courtroom turned to ice. Rhonda jumped up. "Your Honor, we object to this submission being reviewed without prior notice. This violates disclosure rules." "Counsel," Judge Burroughs interrupted. "The statement was submitted voluntarily by a concerned third party and directly pertains to custody. I will not discard it." Amanda's mouth was slightly open now. She turned pale. She hadn't seen it coming, and neither had I. The judge cleared her throat and continued reading from the document in her hands. Ms. Leach describes ongoing emotional neglect, inappropriate exposure to adult conversations in the presence of the children, and a pattern of Amanda Carson using the children as tools to punish Mr. Carson. She also attached screenshots of text messages that corroborate claims of deliberate alienation. The judge flipped a page. Silence crushed the room. Additionally, Ms. Leach states, and I quote, Amanda often bragged that she was going to leave Derek broke and alone. She said, I'm going to take everything from him because I can, not because I need to. I warned her that this was dangerous and cruel, but she laughed and called it strategy. You could hear people shifting in their seats. Even the court reporter paused. Amanda's hands were now folded so tight her knuckles turned white. Furthermore, the judge added, there are texts in which Ms. Carson appears to mock the idea of court-mandated therapy for her children, referring to it as just more leverage against Derek. Rhonda leaned toward Amanda and whispered again, this time more urgently. But the damage was done. For the first time in 7 months, Amanda looked scared. The judge slowly placed the papers down and finally lifted her eyes to meet mine. And that's when I felt it, the change, the subtle shift in how the room saw me. I wasn't just a man defending himself anymore. I was a father who had been fighting a quiet war against a manufactured persona, and the truth had finally arrived to fight beside me. Rhonda tried to pivot. She claimed the messages were taken out of context, said Cynthia had personal grievances, but the judge wasn't buying it. She called for a recess, and before we even stood up, turned to Amanda and said, I strongly recommend you review your legal position with your counsel before this hearing resumes. Your credibility is now in question. That sentence? It broke her. Amanda stood, nodded politely, then rushed toward the exit like she was holding back a scream. I stayed seated. Rebecca leaned over, whispered, she's crumbling. And I believed it. I wasn't angry in that moment. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't smirking. All I felt was release. Like I could finally breathe. Not because I'd won, but because the lies were finally being seen. After recess, the judge took the bench and laid down her ruling. All temporary visitation restrictions were lifted. The emergency protective order was ruled invalid and expunged from record. The court ordered an immediate joint custody reevaluation. Amanda's alimony request was denied until further review of the financial misuse. The final nail? The judge called for Amanda to undergo a psychological evaluation. Not me, her. And with that, we walked out of court even for the first time. Amanda didn't look at me once. She kept her head down, clutching her purse like it was the last thing tethering her to control. Outside, the sky had cleared. A beam of sunlight actually hit the pavement like the universe was giving me the smallest wink. Rebecca patted my back. It took months, but you just got your name back. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just nodded. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it walks into a courtroom wearing sweat-stained shirts and holding a folder full of forgotten truth and waits for the moment it's finally allowed to speak. It started with the silence. Not the courtroom silence. Not the kind between two people mid-divorce. I mean the silence when people stop clapping for the performance and the actress realizes the lights are off and no one's in the seats anymore. After the last hearing, the one where her best friend submitted the affidavit and the judge ripped through Amanda's narrative like it was made of tissue paper, something in her life snapped. But not visibly, not publicly, not dramatically. It was quieter than that. More brutal because of how slow it happened. The first crack? Social isolation. People stopped commenting on her posts. The same women who used a heart react her healing journey selfies started ghosting her completely. Moms from the school she once gossiped with over mimosas stopped inviting her to brunch. She showed up to a PTA meeting at Madison's Elementary, and not one person said hello. Because word had spread, not through gossip, but through screenshots. It turns out, Cynthia's affidavit didn't just go to the court. It made its way anonymously into the parent group chat Amanda used to run like a queen bee. They read her texts, her threats, her fake healing quotes followed by private messages saying he'll regret ever crossing me. She wasn't the empowered victim anymore. She was the woman who used her kids as weapons and bragged about it. By the second week after court, she deleted her Instagram. By the third, she unfriended 26 people on Facebook. Her social circle wasn't turning against her. It was evaporating. Next came the emotional spiral. My daughter Madison told me about it quietly during one of our Saturday park visits. She was holding a grape popsicle, wearing her purple hoodie, and barely looked up as she said, "Mom cried again yesterday." "Oh, I asked gently, "What happened?" She shrugged. She said everyone left her. She said people only liked her when she was winning. That hit hard, because Amanda didn't cry during the worst parts of our divorce. She didn't shed a tear when she emptied our bank account. She didn't flinch when the judge almost removed my visitation rights. But now, when people stopped cheering, when the image crumbled, that's when she broke. And not because of guilt, because of loss of control. She started showing up late to custody exchanges, unkempt, hair still wet from showers, wearing slippers instead of heels. No makeup, eyes puffy. The Amanda I knew was always polished, always intentional. Now, she looked lost. One evening, during drop-off, she didn't even speak. She just handed me the kids' overnight bag, eyes red, lower lip trembling, and turned away before I could ask if she was okay. I didn't chase, because this wasn't mine to fix anymore. This was the consequence. Then came the professional collapse. Amanda had started a part-time position at a wellness studio, some clean, plant-filled place that sold overpriced crystal bracelets and kombucha samples. She used it as her identity for a while, the modern single mom running her own healing business. But after the court documents became public record and Cynthia's statement was downloaded and reposted on a local Reddit thread about toxic divorces, business took a hit. One review in particular ended her reputation. A woman wrote, "Came in for yoga and saw the owner yelling at someone on the phone in the hallway, calling someone a worthless excuse for a man. Unprofessional and disturbing." By April, Amanda was fired. And with no job, no savings, and no more alimony coming in, thanks to the judge freezing support until financial misuse was investigated, she had to move out of her sister's apartment in Hoboken. She went back to Scranton, alone, and not in our old house. The bank had foreclosed after she failed to make 2 mortgage payments I used to cover. She now rents a 1-bedroom above a laundromat near Mussick Street. Madison said it smells like detergent and old shoes. And Amanda? She stopped posting, stopped performing, stopped pretending. Then came a phone call. Blocked number. Sunday night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Amanda. Her voice was quiet, raw, like someone who hadn't spoken in days. "Hi. Hey. I didn't know if you'd answer." I didn't say anything. She hesitated. "I'm not asking for anything. I wanted to say that I'm sorry. For what I did. For how far I pushed it. For what I turned you into in my head." Still silent. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know who I am anymore." I let the silence stretch. And then, calmly, I said, "You were never supposed to lose yourself to destroy me." She cried. Quietly. Didn't even hang up. Just let the line go until she ran out of words. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. But I also didn't curse her, didn't gloat. I let her feel the gravity of what she built, and what fell on top of her. By summer, things were balanced. I had the kids half the week, full weekends every other. The house was gone, sure, but I was stable. My apartment wasn't fancy, but it had a front porch and a working AC, and every night my daughter helped me cook spaghetti or pancakes, depending on her mood. Eli and I started playing catch again. No therapy required. Just time, patience, presence. Amanda, meanwhile, kept to herself. I'd hear things through neighbors. She stopped going out. Her new boyfriend, the bartender, had vanished. Left after the court case tanked her reputation and credit. No surprise. But what struck me most, she never tried to flip the narrative again. She stopped fighting. Because you can only run a performance for so long before the lights cut out and the crowd stops clapping. You know what peace really feels like? It's not silence. It's not revenge. It's waking up on a Sunday morning with your kids still sleeping in the next room, the coffee machine sputtering in the kitchen, and not feeling like you have to prove your worth to anyone anymore. It's opening your eyes and realizing that, for the first time in years, you don't have to brace for war. That was me, 10 months after my world fell apart. I was standing barefoot on the porch of my 2-bedroom rental in Dunmore, holding a chipped mug of gas station coffee, watching my son draw chalk rockets on the driveway while my daughter watered a tomato plant we planted in an old paint bucket. And I realized, this is what survival looks like when you win. Not loud, not glamorous, just quiet, consistent strength. I didn't win everything. I lost my house. My retirement was gutted. My credit score looked like it got hit by a freight train. But I had shared custody, no more restraining orders, and a written agreement that Amanda couldn't so much as switch the kid's dentist without my consent. But more than all of that, I had me back. I stopped explaining myself to the world. Stopped begging people to believe my side. Stopped trying to look okay for appearances. I got real. Started small. Found a gig fixing up rental units around Scranton, drywall patches, minor plumbing, appliance swaps. The kind of work that didn't pay big but paid honest. Then I got picked up by a contracting company rebuilding duplexes in Moosic, and by fall, I had enough to put a down payment on a used Chevy Silverado. Not new, but it was mine. Every inch of that truck smelled like freedom. The kids? They came back to me slowly. Not because I pushed, because I waited. Madison started asking to stay one more night. Eli began bringing his schoolwork to my place, even on Amanda's days. I never said a word against their mom. Not once. I didn't need to. She had built her own legacy, and they saw it. Not through my bitterness, but through her choices. Kids notice. They see who packs their lunches, who folds their shirts, who shows up, even when they're tired, who remembers their favorite color changed, who sits in the front row at every school concert. I never missed one. Not after the divorce. Not once. One night, around Thanksgiving, Madison climbed into my bed during a thunderstorm. She was shaking. I pulled the blanket over her, half asleep, when she whispered, "You feel like home, Daddy." I bit my lip hard. Didn't cry. Just held her until the rain stopped. Because that's all I ever wanted, to be home for them, even when I didn't have one for myself. Amanda? She faded into the background. After the custody agreement was finalized, she withdrew her motion for more alimony. Not because she didn't want it, because she didn't have the leverage anymore. She still had the one bedroom, still had her yoga mat, still had her Instagram bio that said soul in progress. But the audience was gone, and I didn't need her downfall to feel whole. Her crash wasn't my victory. My peace was. The biggest shift? My voice. I started writing again. Late at night, after the kids were in bed, I'd sit at the counter, open my old laptop, and type everything I couldn't say in court. The pain, the rage, the moments I wanted to disappear. The nights I stared at motel ceilings wondering if my kids would forget me. Then one day, I uploaded a piece anonymously to a local men's support forum. It was called, "I Wasn't a Monster." I was the wall holding it together. Within 24 hours, it had over 700 comments. Men from all over the country, Ohio, Texas, Oregon, Maine, saying this was my life. This is my story. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. So I kept writing, not to stay stuck in it, but to help other men walk through it with their heads high. I don't need revenge. I don't need applause. I need what I have. A stable roof. A quiet home. A life with no drama. 2 kids who hug me like they're not scared anymore. Nights where I fall asleep knowing I didn't fold. People ask if I've dated again. The answer's simple. Not yet. Not because I'm bitter. Because I'm careful now. I know what I bring. I know what I won't tolerate. And I know the kind of peace I've bled for. And I won't let anyone take it again just because they smile pretty or say the right things. Maybe one day. Maybe not. But either way, I'm not empty. I'm whole. Sometimes Amanda texts me. Usually something small. "Do you know if Madison left her hoodie?" Eli says you won't let him play that game anymore. Stuff like that. Last month, though, she sent something different. "I know you probably don't care, but I wanted to say that watching you become what you are now hurts in ways I can't explain. You're not the man I left. You're better. And I wish I had seen that before I broke everything." I didn't reply, because that version of me, the one who needed her validation, he's gone. And the man who replaced him, he's not angry. He's just free. So if you're listening to this, and you're where I was, if your bank account is empty, your bed is cold, your kids are distant, and you feel like the world only sees you as a failure, hear me clearly. Don't break. Because one day, your silence will speak louder than her lies. One day, your consistency will outlast her performance. And one day, you'll look around and realize you didn't just survive. You rebuilt.